give you some notes and take all your questions. First, I know it's been a week, but our first opportunity to say publicly, of course, our thoughts are with the Lockhart, Aaliyah Lockhart's family, her school family, with the tragedy at Hitzman Park. There's been a big memorial that's been put there by her friends and family and our community, and we'll continue to it was actually in the driveway there. We've moved it to a nearby location where people can still have that and to honor Aaliyah. So our Parks and Rec team's working with them, but obviously devastating news, and as a father, certainly even more so, thinking about I couldn't imagine what the family is going through, and so our thoughts and prayers definitely are with her family. The Motor Lodge update, we had an informational meeting and a site tour yesterday with interested parties, and we've been encouraged by the initial response for both the Motor Lodge and for 101 West Main, the old Pensacola Sports Building. So remember, both of those are about a week staggered, but both of those are going through the same process right now. And the letters of intent for the Motor Lodge site will be accepted through March 24th. Whereas the letters of intent for West Main are going to be accepted through March 19th. So about 5 days separating those, again, going through very different projects and properties, but going through the same process right now. Victoria and CRA has done a great job managing that. And again, we've been real encouraged with the questions we're getting and just the general interest. Obviously, we're expecting, like we would see always with these types of things, RFPs, RFQs. We're expecting the flow of the formal letters to come in these last few days, because I'm sure these teams, investment groups, whatever, are going to be preparing all their documentation till the 11th hour. So, but we've gotten a lot of emails about a lot of interest, and we've had some people come show up and take these tours and come listen to our staff about what we're looking for there. So very encouraged by that. We got a community information meeting on Thursday at 5:30. Myself and Councilman Wiggins over with really the two major generational projects happening, and one definitely happening. One we hope will happen is obviously the Fricker Center. And the $9.5 million plus our match is about a $10 million project, which is the largest single investment in a community center in the history of the city. And so we're very fortunate and thankful, grateful for so many people that have played a part in that, including our grants office, of course, heading up from there. One $5.5 million grant for hardening of the building and renovation, and then a $4 million grant to really make it a multi-purpose and it become exactly what it's called, a community center, that it would have resources for education, for workforce development, as well as for healthcare, is the other $4 million. So we want to have this conversation right on the outset with the community about here's what those dollars are, here's what you can do with them. Obviously they've been awarded based on some stipulations that we want to make sure as early as possible people understand what those are. And from that point, listen and get feedback about within that realm what we can do and what the community wants to see there. This is their community center in District 7, and we want to hear from the surrounding neighbors about what they want to see, and make sure that right on the outset, we not just until the last minute, but right on the outset, we're starting that community conversation. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Baptist Hospital, and I'll mention in a minute everything as it pertains to the state funding. We've got the $7 million in play right now, waiting. We'll see what the governor does at the end. But I'm sure we're going to be talking about and having conversations around and happy to give status updates on that. This is not a town hall, a traditional town hall format. This will not be all of the department directors, and talking about 311 issues or sanitation issues, all that. Certainly, if people show up with those, we'll take down their information. But we're going to try to keep this, again, this is a community information meeting. We're going to try to keep it focused on those two big projects ahead in District 7. So looking forward to hearing some feedback there. I mentioned local projects update, gave $2.2 million for Bay Bluffs Park, $5 million in for the airport, $7 million in for the Baptist Hospital site, and as you guys all know, certainly we've got to survive the veto pen of the governor, and but we feel really good about that so far. A big thank you to our delegation for taking these three major projects seriously and advocating for these, and so excited to see what comes next. Skate park update, you guys had asked about that, and I mentioned we were going to have a meeting, so we feel pretty good about where now that we have surveillance cameras in place there. That was going to be the tipping point. We didn't want to reestablish any kind of rules without any ability to enforce them. So the good news is, as I alluded to a couple weeks back, talking with our PPD, they feel really good so far about operations at the park. We have not seen any major issues there. We haven't. The biggest issue that we see, and I'm really appreciative of the upward intuition folks, and really just some of the people who love the skate park. There's a lot of self-policing happening there. That the biggest issue we see is graffiti from time to time, and next thing we know, there's an advocate of the park or someone out there with batching paint and trying to go get it figured out before we even know anything about it. And so. I think that's a big testament to the skating community here, that this is something that when this park came in, they wanted it and they cared about it, and now they continue to care about it when it comes to maintenance. So you guys know I'm big on maintenance, and so I'm very appreciative. That's not something that they have to do. So the biggest change you're going to see, we'll repost rules, but the biggest change is we're going to the hours will be in the original posting hours. That kind of caused some of the confusion was sunset to sunrise, which is our normal park situation. The hours will be midnight to 5 a.m. Will be closed midnight to 5 a.m. Excuse me. So 5 a.m. to midnight. Let me say that correctly. Will only be closed from midnight to 5 a.m. So as you know, the lights are there, surveillance is there. PPD is comfortable with that and is signed off. We've got a shift change right around that time, just before that at PPD. So lots of folks coming and going right at the 5 a.m. hour, and we see, being open 19 hours, we see use for 19 hours. We see some of the maybe the older generation, the skaters that might maybe moved a little bit faster and getting up bright and early in the morning before going to work and having the park to themselves. And then of course we see some activity later at night with all the lights there. So real pleased with what's happened so far, and looking forward to getting that established. There's a couple other minor rule changes just with some of the equipment that could be used. I believe it said no bicycles. We're changing that. And even though there's not a lot of bicycle use now, so there's some nuance into some of the park rules, but the big one was what were the hours of operation going to be and how are we going to operate it. We'll continue to operate it the way it's been, and again, I think that's a big testament to the skating community out there about how they're taking care of their park. The update on Portland Loos, we have three. We have ordered 5 in total. We have 3 Portland Loos arriving today, and the first will go in at Bruce Beach. With our intent, I expect by the time I talk with you guys next week, I should have a firm date or a very small range, at least maybe a week range of when we could get phase 1 of Bruce Beach open. Spring and summer season, everyone sees it. I get asked about it all the time driving down Main Street. It looks great, and that we can continue work on phase 2 and open phase 1. And as I've told you guys before, if there was enough of a delta between those two, phase 1 and phase 2, that we certainly want to get that amenity up and going and letting people use it, if that was possible, and it looks like it is. The last stop for me was making sure that we had a public restroom in place. So anyway, that looks like we're on the way there. We'll have some. I hope by next week we'll have a final, whatever the date may be, where we could actually go ahead and kind of soft open phase 1. The next 2 will go. We're going to put one at the skate park. We're going to put one at MLK. Another one, we're working with UWF Historic Trust right now. They've got to get some approvals and boards and things like that. We've actually looked at putting a fourth Portland Loo in the Museum Plaza area, kind of behind the State Museum. That would be in good proximity to Plaza Ferdinand, but also could be used for UWF and some of their events there. That where even if they needed more than one restroom, at least you've got one permanent restroom there. So we're working with a partnership with the Historic Trust on that. They still need to be installed, hooked up to city services. So more to come on when the exact dates are. But we're excited to have them here, so we're one step closer to getting them put in place. Just it's a little half of an update, no exact time frames or anything yet, but we are getting closer to being able to get some information out about you guys remember a few months ago I've been talking about overhauling licenses to use, business tax receipts, all that, the processes and procedures for our business owners, how we rent the sidewalk, how we do parking, if someone's looking for exclusive parking, things like that. We had a lot of archaic policies and procedures that have been around for decades. We're getting closer to the finish line of cleaning that up. We hope we'll be able to send a letter out in April that will outline some of those things. It's going to be a multi-month process and all that, but I just know I haven't given you guys an update on that. We just had a meeting this morning, so nothing concrete to give you yet, but just putting that back on our radar, on your radar, that we're continuing to move forward with getting all of that overhauled, as we've mentioned. Last thing, Smoke Alarm Saturday is March 16th, and that'll be in the East Side neighborhood as part of District 6. And I know Councilwoman Patton will be out there, and that'll be from 9 a.m. to noon. Smoke alarms installed free of charge, and we're actually getting close to installing our 500th smoke alarm with all of our Smoke Alarm Saturdays. So big thank you to our fire department, Red Cross, for being a big partner with us. And last thing I forgot to mention too was no concrete news on this yet, but you guys may have seen the news nationally that Aldi has bought Winn-Dixie. So there was conversation around an Aldi. Obviously, I would think that's going to put in jeopardy, whether it be in the city or county or anything else. That's just something to be paying attention to moving forward. Is that we've got there was one project up on Creighton Road. So I think it's a little bit of unknown right now of what's going to happen on that property. Certainly, we're going to continue to work with them to find a highest and best solution. But it's an outside factor that just I believe it just got finalized within the last week or so. That there's been some conversation around it. So anyway, no real update on what's next there, but just something to put on your radar because an Aldi had been discussed, and I don't want it to seem as if something had changed by their own choice. I think that we're going to look and see what happens there, and certainly, like any developer, we're going to help them if that doesn't come to fruition. What can we do that's good for the community? So we'll continue to look at that. But that's it. That's all I have. Happy to take your questions.
So just to clarify on that last point, are you saying that project's been canceled? Or?
Well, I don't know that they have anything under contract. You'll have to. I certainly not comfortable speaking to the details of who they are talking to or any of that. It's a private. It's not city property at all. It's private property. The only reason it's in the public realm is there was a discussion around around a variance needed, and that potentially. But understand. We always talk about from a policy standpoint, variances, things like that are not tenant specific, so meaning you don't grant a variance because Publix is coming or Aldi's are coming or a movie theater is coming. You do it because it fits, and it would be very risky to do that. But the reality is, why I'm sharing that with you is people hear the news of a grocery store coming. Obviously, that's something that's out in the public realm, and so there's that outside factor. So they've notified us of that outside factor, but I'd hate to speculate on what they're going to do next. Or I do know that they don't have. There's nothing that's certain, whether it be Aldi or some alternative. But that's just something they notified us of. That has now kind of put a complexity into that potential project. So just conveying that information, and again, it's private property. And we have notified them. We're certainly willing, as we would with anybody, be amicable to be helpful in any way to bring an amenity to the city.
Mayor, we saw on Facebook that there's a lot of people concerned about when Malcolm Young was demolished, there were no tents or water sprays, and since the building was built in the 60s, do we know that asbestos was removed sometime prior, and that's why something like that wasn't?
Look, just so you know, I'm always hesitant with a lot of people. What I generally see on Facebook about Malcolm Young is not a lot of people; it's a few people. But what I'll say is we followed every protocol. Part of the reason that the demolition took place when it took place is environmental holds on time. So I'm fully confident in us doing the due diligence, and actually, as a matter of fact, we were made aware that some of those small handful of people were calling. I don't remember if it's DEP or EPA, which acronym, but in Tallahassee to see if we were, doing the proper thing, which of course we were. So, we followed every procedure that we've supposed to. I'm 100% confident that we've done exactly as we should have. And when you get down into the rabbit hole of Facebook on Malcolm Young, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and continues to be to weaponize some that we've done something wrong or at a turn, which we certainly have not. And I stand behind everything that we've done so far, our staff and our administration, in terms of getting that done.
Mayor, can you talk about the ST Engineering's final phase in the hangar expansion? I think the News Journal had reported recently about some gaps in known funding to bring it in for a landing. Could you give us a little more fidelity into that?
Yeah. So actually just had a chance to meet with some ST leadership. Late last week they were in town, and we're in constant conversation with them, both on the hangar project as well as being good partners with the potential A&P Mechanics School at Pensacola State.
Jeffrey Lamb?
No, it was Tim McBride that I just met with, but over the months, of course, Jeffrey, Stephen, Tim. And so, I think we're in a pretty good place right now. Number one, as you saw, we've awarded the bid for Hangar 3, the $85 million project. And then, as you can imagine, with any project that was funded in 2016, mid-2010s versus what the cost of real dollars are today, that I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that what was believed to be enough for 4 hangars is now not likely enough for 4 hangars. That being said, I think I'm very confident in working with ST on what the alternative becomes. Could there be a modified Hangar 4? Could there be an expansion to Hangar 3? There's a lot of other things that we can do with the remaining funds that allow them for us to grow our job. Why are we doing this? We're doing this to help create jobs. So we want ST certainly to have more capacity, of which creates more jobs. So we're going to find a happy medium between the delta of what would take to do a Hangar 4 and doing nothing other than Hangar 3. We're going to find some solution in there. We continue to work with them, and I don't think we know that answer yet, but we've got some ideas and some theories about what we could do. Again, whether that adds capacity to an existing hangar, something like that. But in terms of going and chasing another $40 or $50 million from those same sources, that's less likely than it is that we'll adapt with the budget that we have. So.
Well, they said last fall that they had out-year contracts to occupy all of that space. That they still feel the same way?
Yeah. So I know they've mentioned that I believe it's United that has contracts that are ready to go the second the building's done, and so. But I think that's part of the navigation of your first question, which is, what do we want? We want to make sure that they can meet those obligations as best as they can, with also facing the financial realities of a project funded 6, 7, 8 years ago, and what that leaves us with today. So we want to maximize the ability to create jobs here, and so do they. And so that's why I feel real confident with wherever we land. whether that's, again, a larger hangar 3, whether that's a smaller hangar 4, that remains to be seen. But I think we're looking at a potential modification within the budget that we have right now to continue to be able to so that they can meet their obligations and that we can maximize what that job count is, for our local citizens in the community.
Mayor, with today's SpaceX splashdown, do you know if there were any city entities on standby or involved in any way in that?
Not that I know of. I saw it was, I was going to say bright and early, it wasn't bright. I think it was like 4:40 in the morning. So that's not to say, we can check on that. That's not to say, I'd hate to say that we weren't, but in terms of city assets, we would really only have our fireboat that I think would had any role in that. But we'll check on that to make sure that that's correct. I don't want to leave out and not give due credit to some of our staff if they were out there helping, but I don't believe we were.
Mayor, the legislature passed a bill about prohibiting homeless people from sleeping in public spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you with the county in coming up with some solution?
To which part specifically? The big question or the small one?
Yeah, we remove them from sleeping in
Yeah.
the right of way
Right.
and parks. There's got to be a place where they're allowed to go.
Yeah, what I'd say as we sit here today, we're analyzing, as you know, that's a law that is around the entire state. And what also happens many times with laws around the entire state is they're written for certain size populations and not as adaptive in smaller populations. So what may be an easier solution with the resources in Tampa and Orlando or Miami may be a little more difficult a solution in Pensacola, to your question. So no direct conversations yet. We've just been kind of monitoring whether this was going to get through or not. And then we're looking at that now, what our obligations are. But I expect that, to be able to adhere to that plan, that we're going to have to get together with the county and try to figure out a solution.
There's an exemption for financially constrained communities. It's interpreted to mean rural communities.
Uh-huh.
I know you've had conversations, but it doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Yeah, so, where we are right now, I could speak to some of the things that could help, not just how do we abide by that law, but also I actually just had a great conversation. I'd mentioned that we were looking to bring in John DeCarmine from who's running the Low Barrier Shelter in Gainesville, consults around the country on getting those stood up. I just had a call with him last week. My expectation is that he'll be in May, that we're going to hire him, bring him on at the city to get us that roadmap to what Opportunity Center would look like. And that, so looking forward to bringing him on. I expect that there'll be some public engagement with that as well. And so, just finalize that. That's going through the PO process right now to get him brought on. And then, of course, we continue to have conversations along with Liz Kissel at the county, Councilwoman Patton, myself, the Homeless Reduction Task Force. We continue to work on potential locations for that, as well as how we marry, because Rick, you've covered this, that low barrier is not going to be the solution to all problems. We've got to have a place for people to go. And then when they get into the shelter and it's time for them to have housing, we need a solution there as well. So as I've maintained now for many months, this is going to have to be a 1-2 punch of the city and county. And I think this new legislation is a microcosm of that, is how we also adhere to this new legislation is going to have to be a collective effort between us and the county. We're not going to be able to do that alone. So we'll continue to look at it. And, I'm confident that in our conversations around this issue with city and county have been positive and collaborative. I would imagine that whatever wrinkle the new legislation throws us, that we'll be able to work something out to the best of our ability.
Mayor, this is on your New Orleans trip
Uh-huh.
to visit the Bayou District. From what we understand, with you being there and a couple other council members, while it wasn't a meeting, it technically could be considered one under Sunshine Law.
Mhm.
Do you have any comment or concern about?
No.
Okay.
No concern. It's, as you can imagine, if there's a presentation in the city and 7 council members are at it, that's allowed. They're allowed to be in the same room so long as it's not, with city business. So, and frankly, there's ways to, certainly if someone believes that there was an issue with that, there's protocols in place that they can look into that, but or you can speak to the council members in question. But at the end of the day, Councilman Wiggins is in the district of which the Legacy campus is located. Councilwoman Broughton is in the district of which the new campus is located, and that's where we were. So as I said, there's certainly any of the other folks on Facebook can look out for whatever that protocol is, and certainly they can look into it as deep as they'd like.
Mayor, Ms. Lavoie had briefed the city council back in January on sort of the budget looking forward here. One of the things she pointed out was city revenues are starting to flatline. Mm-hmm. Can you give us an update on economic conditions, how it may be affecting the city budget as you look toward the summer?
Yeah, I'd hate to speculate too much on the whole budget because I just haven't seen. We're just in the construction phase right now in our own departments on the next budget. But I saw the same thing you saw, which is, and this is an amateur economist's theory, but I would think that the cost of living, the cost of going out to eat, the cost of the inflation that's happening in our community is going to perturb folks from having a higher income and spending more money, and certainly interest rates. As you know, our general fund is the largest payer into the general fund's property tax, and so inflation certainly can have a dampening impact on the interest in home sales and commercial real estate, things like that. So for my amateur economist brain, that's what I would when I see that flatlining, that's what I see. Someone more expert could, like Amy, might be able to have a different theory. But in terms of just operations, are we changing anything or modifying anything based on that at this point? No. We feel good about where we are. But it's certainly if we start to see even more dire, economic conditions down the road, as we always would, we would, start looking at that with a fine-tooth comb and start to adapt. But so we hope to see that curve come back and that we continue to see that upward trajectory, but we'll keep an eye on it.
On the LOIs for the motor lodge in West
Mm-hmm.
Main, since it is kind of a newer process for the city, how does that work once you get the LOIs back? Because there's not really any criteria to grade them on necessarily. So how do you decide which ones to move forward with?
I'll tell you what the general concept is. I don't want to speak for Victoria on exactly how they're going to do this one or that one, but the entire format, the idea is you're not picking a winner necessarily. So for example, you could get 10 letters of interest and you could keep 8, or 9 or 10, and then you would go to another phase of, okay, well, what would the cost of the property be? You would ask for more detail to continue to weed those out. But there's the other side of the coin. You could get 1 letter of interest and that's it, and so of course you would move forward with that. So there's no official process. There's no bidding. These letters of interest don't necessarily have to say, we'll pay this amount for the property. What we're saying is, give us your ideas about how you can make this community better and with this particular property and what you're looking to do. So there's no elimination format or qualifying format that requires you to only have 1 or 2. It's a vetting process ultimately. It's just kind of a phase 1 vetting process to say, give us your ideas, and if we like 3 or 4 or 5 of those ideas, we could take that group and then move them forward into something more formal, whether that be an RFQ or an RFP. That's my understanding of the format, but I'd have to talk with Victoria about, if there's some specificity as to how one is going to work at Motor Lodge versus Pensacola Sports. I wouldn't be as clear on that, but I can tell you that for the most part, that is the general format of it. And remember that why we do that is because we want the general idea. We don't want to bring rigid ideas to property that may or may not be realistic. And that's the whole concept here, is that we feel after 7, 8, 9, 10 letters of interest that we would start to see a pattern or a theme of what is feasible. there, because you can imagine if I'm not a developer, I've never repurposed a 28 unit motel before, right? So if I came in and said, you must do this is how you have to do it, well, we may get no interest, or it may be such a massive subsidy outside of the property itself that it's not feasible for the taxpayer. So we don't want rigid ideas to misguide a project. We want to hear from the community, what is feasible. And so that's why I like this process, is that gives us enough sample size within these letters of interest to say, oh, all right, well, clearly there's a theme here. We can't do that, and it looks like we could do this. And that's what I think is the benefit of doing it this way. But again, just to reiterate, this is not like what we think of with an RFQ or RFP, where you're voting and picking winners and all that. What we're saying is, show us you're interested in it, show us what your general idea is, and then we can vet those from there as wide or as narrow as we'd like, and then move into something more formal.
Mayor, you mentioned this at several city meetings here recently, but for the benefit of the audience here, community land trust. The idea was floated that this could be a possibility at 925 East Jackson Street. What is it about community land trust that is attractive to you in this instance? Yeah, so I was going to say, one thing we've talked about recently is to have, I think it would be really valuable for the community and for the council to have a workshop on what a community land trust is, not just at 925 East Jackson, but anywhere. Just whether it's Habitat doing it, or whether it's the city doing it, or the county, or anything else, just get a better understanding. What I like about the community land trust, and why I'm an advocate for it at Jackson and potentially in the future other projects, is it accomplishes something we have not been able to accomplish in the city, and that's to keep it in attainable housing in perpetuity. It's got the ability because the land trust owns the dirt. So you still sell the home to a qualified buyer that is at whatever workforce housing income, and if we're talking about Jackson, I'm interested in workforce housing, teachers, firefighters, police officers, 180, 100, 120% AMI, that kind of range. And they are able to purchase that home at 30% of their income, their household income, and then when they go to sell it, they can still experience the appreciation, the generational wealth building that, what's the value of owning a home? Is that when you own it for 20 years, you're able to extract some value that you can pass on to your kids and grandkids. So you still want to give people that opportunity to see that appreciation, but it also puts a ceiling on how much appreciation. And I think concepts in years past around here, and in many communities, by the way, we're not unique in this, but in many communities, what would happen is there'd only be a period of 5 years, 10 years where it would be affordable. So I buy the home, I qualify for it, I buy it for $250,000, and then in 5 years, once that runway's over, you sell it for $700,000, and all of that appreciation only goes to that original buyer. In the case of the land trust, there's a pay it forward element of that. You do see some of that upside, the appreciation as the buyer, but then some of that also is conveyed to the next person that you sell it to, who has to be qualified to live there. So it puts some controls and monitoring in place to own the dirt in the land trust. It puts some monitoring in place that ensures that it stays affordable. As you can imagine, when you say the word affordable housing, it means a lot of things to a lot of people, as I experience both now and anytime we talk about it. Some people say, well, it's only going to be super, super, super low income housing if it's affordable. Then some people say, well, affordable housing means it's going to be market rate and it's going to be for some developer. The nice thing about the community land trust, if you really research it, is the truth is between those two things, is that it can be workforce housing, it can be for our teachers, our police officers, our firefighters, and that cannot afford to own a home in the city right now on their salaries. So we can provide that. That I think is much needed. We're in a crisis. We all agree on that. We just tend to not agree, or we have some stereotypes around what that means. And so that's a hard thing for us to get all our arms around, and that's the genesis, or the idea at least, behind having a workshop around a community land trust, is to let's start to make sure that we're singing from a relatively same sheet of music about what that actually means and what it means for our community, and not get down into to the rabbit holes of
stereotypes and misperceptions around what affordable housing means. So I'm certainly very big advocate of that. I think that would be great at Jackson and in other places in our city, and I think that'd be a really engaging, interesting conversation with our community and with our council to talk about that.
When would you hope to schedule a workshop?
I'd have to get with council staff. I mean, as soon as reasonable. I don't think it's got to be next week or anything. I just think, and again, it won't even be pertaining specific to this parcel that you've asked me about. I think it'll just be let's get a good education on exactly what a community land trust is, what it isn't. And be able to answer all those questions. I think that would be a valuable workshop for all of us in the community. Anything else? All right. Thank you, guys.